do. Bob will put us way behind. But it's coming, and it'll be here next summer.
And from a capacity standpoint, every gallon per minute you add, 1 EDU. It's just a rule of thumb. So if you add 700-800 gallons a minute, 700-800 homes. So when you start looking at when you start adding, or you put an industry at 1 MDD up, well, it's another well. It's like it gives you kind of flavor for what it takes.
But I will say this: I'd rather, even with the time frame extended, I'd rather use that grant money than have citizens of Mount Home have to pay for that.
Absolutely. That's up. Not don't forget.
And I will throw this out there. It has nothing to do with this well, but well 15 has been offline for 2 years. We are in the final stages of repairing that well, and we'll be back online here in a couple weeks.
Any more questions for Chris and team? All right, Chris, thank you, brother.
Thanks, James. I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, Jordan. Thank you, guys.
All right, we're gonna move back up to action item number 3, old business, deliberation decision of Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations for finding specs. Zone C4 with community and town of Bennett Ranch Station with the conditions. Council.
Mayor.
Councilman McGarvey.
This is just more of a statement. After listening to what Chris just said, and I think we've known it for a long time, but how do we build more houses when we don't have, it's a very hard predicament that we're in. We don't have the proper infrastructure, and at this point we don't have a plan, really. That's really a tough predicament to be in, because we know we need housing, but we just don't have it.
All right, what do you guys want to do with action item number 3? Okay. Councilman Harjo.
Karen, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions for you.
And let the record reflect that I'm going to step out really quick. Councilman Brennan, you're running the show. I'll be right back.
Thanks. I didn't touch anything. I might just be getting tired.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. The rail industrial annexation. I'd like to step back into that. Again, I guess to ask the questions under the definitions section of conceptual development plan. There's a statement in here that reads that the submittal of a more detailed planned industrial development plans for the city approval in reference to specifically industrial development. Further down in the document, it goes on to discuss the assurances, the sale of transfer that this agreement carries. As I read this document today, there's discussion in this hearing or in this proceeding about buffer zones. In your interpretation of that, it is being, I guess, applied as residential under the rezone to C4 R4 PUD. Again, for the solid references that this body has to weigh against, the definitions as they're enumerated in our own ordinances provide only 2 definitions for buffer. A buffer strip, landing area, which may include the combination of berms, fences, block walls, grass, shrubs, and trees used to visibly separate one use from another. or to shield, block noise, lights, or other nuisances. And a buffer yard, and it refers to see chapter 11 of this title, which goes on to talk about the residential use of a buffer yard. I think we're, again, having a significant difference of opinion on what the definitions are, what we as a body can rely upon for information on our decision making. I'm having trouble still identifying the leap between I-1, as it's stated in this agreement, and the future and applied use for C4 or 4PUD. I think the biggest question here is, if the city has made investments, if the city in previous iterations of council have agreed to this rail industrial annexation agreement, and it refers in no way to residential use, in no way to even commercial use, it's specifically citing I-1. The comp plan discusses I-1. Help me understand where that difference between what you're applying for and what we have to deliberate on exists.
Sure, very thorough question, so I appreciate that. The more time you're engaged in these types of land use discussions, the more you understand that, or the more that one understands. I went through it in my career early on. Everybody thinks they know what will be the organic growth. If I may provide a very terse analogy, for example, the city limits, for instance, or the area of impact, it's a guess. It's a guess of where you think the city is going to grow. We have no idea. The city doesn't own the land around it. It's owned by individuals in rural communities like this. It's farmland typically, such as the subject parcel. So the body and the bodies that made the decisions and were participant in the discussions were making a best guess of what they thought would be in the best interest of the city. I always hope we can agree that I-1 has quite a plethora of land uses, or excuse me, permitted uses, land type uses, that are within that zoning. So, which does include residential. So, that is why I say, well, if we're proposing something that is less intensive, it may have been either an oversight, I don't know, or simply that the decision-making body didn't think that a higher density residential was, it may have been something that they simply didn't want personally. However, they listed other types of residential. That's why I'm stating that over and over again. So, also included in I-1 are things that are not typically associated with industrial. Schools, for instance, are permitted outright. Fire stations, police stations, shopping, retail, all of those things are permitted. So what one has to do then is to interpret. And that's why if I look over at Mr. Fitzer, there's interpretation. The ordinance, there's no way somebody can identify every possible use that one might have, a land owner or a prospective developer or business. So the argument that I'm making is that we didn't propose originally when this began any real residential. It was industrial, and I wasn't privy to these conversations. So since 2008, 5 or 8, somewhere between there, how many industrial users did we have? Potential. I think there were plenty, but either they wanted the land for nearly nothing, which isn't good for the current landowner. So, and I'll express as well and stress that Mr. Wheats has invested a considerable sum of money into both the city and in Elmore County as well. Considerable amount. My investments in the city are considerably less, but to the tune of $1 million is what we've invested in this community already as well. We do that because we believe in the city. We believe it will prosper economically. We believe that it will be a good place to raise children. Mr. Wheats shares that. And he understands that, and I don't mean to talk him up, but these are the discussions that he and I have. What's in the best interest? We want industrial use, but in order to get it, there needs to be additional investment on top of the city municipal concerns like water and sewer. They're looking for roads, expansion or extension of water and sewer lines, and they don't want to pay for it, or they won't come here. That is why we think that this particular use, and another thing they mentioned is where are employees going to live? I'll say an economic truism. You cannot increase the wages enough. Well, there's a term for this, I can't remember it in economics, but you can only increase the wages so much for any given industry. If somebody's working in an Amazon fulfillment warehouse, your wages can only go so high until Amazon replaces all the personnel with robots. Because robots don't take days off, robots don't need to take breaks. And so you can only increase those wages so much. So my concern is that if we don't get a source of revenue, a tax base, I don't know if that industrial campus is, maybe it will if somebody came to Mr. Wheats and said, hey, we would like to do it, we're going to pay for the expansion. We wouldn't say no, but it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in 8 years. And so there's no reason, we believe, to think that it'll change. So we want to be proactive. And it's clear that there's some concern about growth, residential growth. But we do have industrial businesses, including Marathon Cheese. I know that there were several, I believe several people from the council and the city staff that attended a meeting with Marathon Cheese in the corner of Turner House Depot. And Sean is the name of the plant manager. And he said one of our concerns is the cost of housing. And so you have kids that are staying in hotels, and then kids that are here locally that live with their parents that would like to get out, but there's no place for them to live. They can't afford a $400,000 house. This is the solution for all of those things. So whether we agree or not, I don't know if that's necessarily all that important. If it were really clear and bulletproof, we wouldn't be having this discussion. In fact, if all the stars aligned, we wouldn't be coming to you with a PUD. We would have an ordinance that outright permitted multifamily. We don't have such an ordinance. It's allowed within R4 and C4. There's no ordinance that says high density is allowed here and here and here in these zones. So hence the PUD, hence our coming to you for permission. I'll note the annexation agreement, again, does clearly say a buffer, and what constitutes a buffer is left for interpretation. I wish it were a little clearer. I certainly do. Words have meanings. And so in addition to the comprehensive plan, we do have the area of impact that shows that this was originally considered a residential area. This is, I pulled from the city website. This is the map that you pull up.
Karen, is there a date on that?
I pulled it on September 23rd.
The date of creation.
I think it was 2010 is the last iteration, almost 2011.
And actually we've had at least one comp plan full review since then. The annexation agreement was created since then. We've heard tonight that permitted development numbers standards exist at 2,900 EUs worth of use and capacity. The annexation agreement, again, still clearly states no any other intent for that ground but I-1. The landowner has agreed to the use restrictions per this document. The annexation is appropriately zoned with light industrial zoning designation and a railway industrial overlay zone set forth in city code. I am still at a loss for where these two concepts are congruent. Showing a map that is created in 2010 with the connotation that this is both a current and adopted use for land it's outdated, to say the least. I think we have enough here to make a decision when what's being proposed is not congruent with plain industrial development, that this agreement defines that needs to be submitted to the city for approval. The literal interpretation of definitions in our code, we have a significant number of factors that weigh in, is our city capable of delivering what you're asking for? That's in front of us. But at the very base level, the rail industrial annexation agreement is not congruent with this application.
And I would strongly disagree. Strongly.
So
And I think the
here's
city
my
would be,
thing, Taryn. What frustrates me, and it's just I don't get to vote, so it's just me telling you how I feel. What I don't like is coming in here, dropping a grenade. You can put the pin back in the grenade, but you said if you don't accept it as is, we're taking our toys, we're going home. Why can't, like you said, we want to have this communication, let's talk through it. Maybe this body doesn't love the product, right? Maybe they do love the product. Yeah, obviously, why can't we have those custom discussions and say, hey, we want this instead of that? Why can't we sit here and talk like, hey, can we do this instead of just, nope, it's this.
I do have a very simple answer to that. We did have workshops. The city was invited. Every member here, this is pre-application. My understanding of the open meetings law is pre-application. I mean, it seems like a leap to say that you cannot attend. I think that would be a violation of one's First Amendment speech and assembly. So, now I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV either, so I will defer to the greater minds in that regard. However, I believe that we have presented ample opportunity to discuss. I'll say it, and Councilman Harjo brings up great points. However, I think it's grasping at straws for justification to deny. That's fine. That is perfectly within your right to do so. My concern, and I think it's a concern that's shared by many, it's not just Dan and I in the community that would love to see this project move forward. We fully understand the constraints. I'll say it in perhaps a little more, Taryn Mitchell terms. I do believe that, I think that it's personality conflict rather than concern with the project. If there are no EDUs, there's no capacity, we would never, whether we have permission to do so or not, I certainly wouldn't say, well, shoot, let's go ahead and build, and let's see what the city does. I mean, it doesn't work that way. We built into the development agreement that we would come before planning and zoning in this body, and we would say we would like to have the next phase of 144 units. We know that it will take, let's say, I don't want to speak for a contractor, let's say it takes 24 months to get 144 units. plenty of time. In 24 months, knowing that we've got a tax base of 72 units plus community building, property value is going to go way up. The property taxes will go way up. That is how infrastructure will be paid for in expansion.
Councilman Bennett?
I'm gonna leave, I'll just tell you my opinion. My feeling is that this is the location for the council to be able to hash stuff out, to be able to talk about it. Not in one of the public meetings, right? Because that would feel like a predetermined, like, maybe not an answer, but getting there.
Correct.
So this is the spot. And then I heard you say that, if I heard you correctly, you said that you feel like there's a personality conflict here. You have the right to feel how you feel, you know, like, I think you're a great guy, Dan, right? I think you're a great guy, absolutely. And Rod, Alan, like, I'm sorry, but I hope you're not buying into their statements that there was a predetermination that happened at the last meeting, because I was late and I wasn't involved in it. That couldn't be further from the truth. Did I say that right? Yeah, whatever. Okay, not at all what happened. And so I know this has gotten delayed for you, but I think for good reason for the council of planning and zoning, whether it was errors, whatever, for members to feel like they need to do more research. I think that's where it lies. I guess I can't speak for the other three members, but I don't think there's a personality conflict. And I think it's us trying to do the right thing slowly and carefully. I'm sorry it's too slow for you, but I agree. I think the pin needs to go back in that grenade.
I like you. You know, I've always agreed on one thing, property owners' rights. And
We agree on more than that, Mr. Mayor.
But you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I don't think there's a conflict of